Now, already we have seen uh, what is the exception and how to handle it. Okay, but whatever we have seen, that exceptions are like a predefined exceptions. Okay, those exceptions are handled by like a try, catch, finally. Okay, now based on the hierarchy, we have different types of exceptions: error exception and checked exception and unchecked exceptions. Okay, now these exceptions are generating the system defined exception. Those system defined exceptions we converted to user friendly error messages. Okay, now whatever the exceptions is generated, now we converted user defined exceptions. That means simply the JVM will create an object of exception. Okay, now again we converted to user friendly exception. But here I'm going to create like a my own exception. Okay, now till now we created exception. Okay, then I want to convert, I want to create my own exception. Okay, I want to create like my own exception. That exception I need to give to JVM. Then again JVM will create an object. Okay, now if you want to create a user defined exception, first we need to understand the remaining keywords through and throws. Okay, these two keywords we are going to use to create a user defined exception. What kind of user defined exception? For suppose if you want to vote, now we need the age is okay greater than 18. Okay, if the age is less than 18, you are not eligible for vote. Okay, whenever you are trying to vote, simply it's showing that exception, you are not eligible for vote. Okay, that is a invalid age exception. Now, but suppose the person, we have like some employees we have. Okay, now in the company we have only 100 employees, but we are searching for 101 employee. Okay, now there is no 101 employee. Okay, now employee found exception. Okay, employee found exception, course found exception, temperature invalid exception. Okay, this type of exceptions are we define. Okay, now we are defining. Now we can say like that is a user defined exceptions or a custom defined exceptions here. Now, but what does it mean by and the throw and the throws? Okay, now throw is a keyword. Okay, throw is a keyword. Now it is okay. It is used to throw an exception. Okay, if you want to throw an exception, we can use a throws. Okay, sorry, we can use the throw keyword. Now, what about like throws? Now, throws is a keyword. Okay, now it is used to declare an exception. Okay, if you want to declare an exception, now we can use the throws keyword. Now, we can throw only one time. Okay, if you want to throw an exception, we can throw only one time. Now, here we can throws. Okay, we can throws multiple times. Okay, simply we can say that this throw we are going to use for unchecked exception. This throws we can use for the checked exceptions. Okay, now we can throw only one time. We can throws multiple times. Hmm. Throw we can use within the method. Okay, within the method we can use the throws we can use with the method signature. Okay, throws we can use with the method signature. Okay, you know that what is the method signature? Now, Throw is following by instance. Okay, instance in the sense like the new keyword. Okay, by using new keyword we can represent the throw key, the throw keyword. Okay, now okay, throws is following with the method signature. Okay, now again we can throw only at a one time. Now throws can propagate only unchecked exceptions. Okay, unchecked exceptions. We cannot propagate checked exceptions. Now, the throws can follow both checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Throws can follow both checked and unchecked exceptions. Okay. Now, these are the points to remember to create like a user-defined exceptions. Okay. Now, these two keywords are going to use now whenever we are creating user-defined exceptions. Now, throw is a keyword. It is used to throw an exception. Now, it is a declare an exception. Now, we can throw only one time by using throw keyword. Okay, we can throw multiple times. Okay, now throw we can use within the method. Now, throws we can use with the method signature. Now, throw is following by an instance. Now, throws is following with method signature. Now, we can use at the time of unchecked exceptions. Now, we can following but checked and unchecked exception both. Okay, but the most important point, how to create a okay, how to create a custom exception or user defined exception. Okay, how to create it. Okay, now if you want to create it, the first point, your class should be extensive with super exception class or super exception class. Okay, that is throwable or exception. You can use anything. Okay. Now, one more thing, your class should have at least one param constructor. Okay. Now, your class should have at least one param constructor. Okay. Now, if we want to create any custom exception, okay, if you want to create like any user defined exceptions or custom exception, now your class should represent or extend with a super exception class. Your class should have at least one param constructor. Okay, at least one param constructor. Okay, now these two points we need to remember now whenever we are creating user defined exception. Okay, now we'll see like one by one examples. We have the different types of examples to represent like custom exceptions. Okay, now now first we need to create like a user defined exception. Okay, now but suppose already you know that like a age invalid exception. Simply here, whenever we are creating like user defined exception, that exception is the last word we need to use. Okay, now this type of naming convention we need to follow. Which type of exception? Age invalid exception. Okay, this exception word should be we need to follow. Okay, that is a naming convention. Okay, age invalid exception, employee not found exception. Okay, now separate class we are creating. Now age or otherwise simply here invalid age exception. Okay, invalid age exception. Now this class is going to be extensive with okay, extensive with a super class, that is a exception or throwable, you can choose anything. Okay. Now this class, now see, our class is extended with the super class, the first point. Okay. Now what's the next point? Your class should have at least one param constructor. Okay. Now simply here, public invalid invalid age exception. Now whenever exception is raised, I want to show some message. Okay, I want to show some message. Now whenever that param constructor, the parent class message going to be displaying that. Okay. Now it is a class extends with a super class. Okay. Now param constructor. Okay. Param constructor. Okay. This is a user different class. Now then how we can validate this class? Okay. Now how we can validate with age by using this applying a user defined exception. Okay. Now for that reason, simply I'm going to create like one more class, age validator. Okay, age validator. Now here the age validator, simply I'm going to create one method, public static. Now void. Okay, you can use normal method also, but the static in the sense like by using class name we can call it. Now validate age. Okay, validate age. Now this method is going to be taking like one parameter, that is the age. Okay. Now the point is here, condition unit, right? If, okay, if the age is less than 18, okay, if the age is less than 18, I want to throw, okay, I want to throw new, okay, exception. Which type of exception we have? Okay, we cannot represent like here arithmetic exception. Why? Now whenever I extend with exception, all the classes, all the different classes are entered into invalid exception. Okay, that's why directly we can mention the throw new invalid exception, invalid age exception. Okay, now here we need to pass some message. Now ages are simply here, you are, you are not eligible for vote. Okay, now simply why, in the sense the age is less than 18. Now here we are getting error. Okay, we are getting error. Okay, now why we are getting error in the sense now we are through an exception, but if you want to use this invalid as exception, okay, it is related to that checked exception. We need to handle that. Okay, now ఇక్కడ మనం త్రో చేసాం కరెక్ట్, కానీ ఇక్కడ చూడండి ఇన్వాలిడ్ ఏజ్ ఎక్సెప్షన్ అనేది if you want to use it, okay, validate age method need to be called throws, okay, throws here invalid age exception. Okay, for suppose simple point here, if you want to understand, uh like I shared one movie with you. If you want to watch that movie, first you need to download some one more application. Okay, now then only you can watch that movie. Okay, I shared like one link. If you want to see that movie, you need to install some application. The same way here, if you want to throw an exception, which type of exception you created, you should be throws an invalid age exception. That's the point. Okay, now based on this throws declaration, you can throw the invalid age exception. Okay, that's a point about the throw and the throws. Observe carefully here. Throws is a keyword, it's a following with the method signature. See here, now this is the method signature, it's a following with the throws keyword. Now throw is a following by a new keyword. Okay, it's an instance. The throw keyword we can use within the method. Okay, the same thing we wrote here. Okay, within the method, the throws is multiple times. We can throw one more exception. For suppose SQL exceptions also we have. Okay, suppose like this. Now we can throw multiple exceptions. But right now we don't have anything. But if you want to define it, we can define multiple exceptions also. Okay. Now, main method. Okay. Here I want to call validate age. Okay. Validate age. Now simply here age validator dot validate age. I'm passing like 12 for suppose. Still we are getting here error. Okay. Again, within the method you are using validate age. Okay. Validate is already extended with the invalid age exception. If you want to use again the validate method, again you need to throw the invalid age exception. Okay. If you want to use it now, you need to handle this invalid age exception. Otherwise, simply you are getting error. That's the point. Now the point is what we need to execute it. If you want to execute it, then you can call that invalid age exception. Now place the cursor, add throws declaration. Now see here, again this method is following with the throws invalid age exception. Okay, invalid age exception. Now after that, simply here SYSO observable here remaining 1000 lines of code. Okay, now right click, run as Java application. Now here we are getting error. Okay, here what is exception? You're not eligible for vote. The 12 we are getting. Okay, what type of exception here? Com dot exception, invalid age exception we are getting. Okay, here we define. It's not automatic exception. Okay, it's not like related to other exception. Now we created our own exception. Now we got our exception. Okay, now whenever we are getting exception, the remaining line is not going to be executing. Okay, this exception we are giving to JVM, the JVM will create object like this. Okay, it will send for a message. Now, or suppose, see here, observe carefully here. Now, age validator, validate age 12. Now, the 16th line is the control goes to the 9th case. Okay, or simply here, the 7th line. The age I'm passing 12, the 12 is less than 18. Okay, now whenever the condition is success, now it is a throwing an exception. Which is exception? Invalid age exception. You're not eligible for vote. Okay, now the age is going to be displaying like an exception. Okay, for suppose if I'm passing 22, okay, I'm passing 22. Now right click, run as Java application. Now here the remaining 1000 lines of code is going to be executed. Okay, now the same thing. Or else simply here we can write else condition also. Now if it is possible, SYSO simply. Now you are eligible for what? Okay, why in a sense? Your age is greater than 18. Now, right click, run as Java application. Now, here you are eligible for vote 22. Now, remaining 1000 lines are coding going to be executed perfectly. Okay, now like this, we can create our exception. Okay, now we can apply our own exceptions. Okay, otherwise, simply we can create like arithmetic exception, which type of exception we can predict it. But here, if you want to create your own exception, we need to apply the throw and the throws keywords. Okay. For suppose simply here, whenever I don't have any funds in my account, I want to show that invalid, insufficient fund exception. Then how I can mention? Simply here, I can create like one more class that is a bank account. Okay. Now above this class, normally I'm going to create it. Now class, what is the exception? Which type of exception you want to create? Insufficient fund exception. Okay, insufficient fund exception. Okay, now just exception class is created. Now simply here exception class. Now this class should be extensive with what? Super class. Now extensive with the super class, that is a exception. Okay, sorry. It's wrong. Exception. Now, one point is done. The second point is what? Now, we need to create param constructor. Okay, param constructor. Now, simply here, public insufficient fund exception. Now, we need to generate some message. Okay, through the super of a parent. Super of message in the sense, if any message is not displayed, it is displayed from the exception only. Okay, but suppose insufficient fund in the sense, now it is a param constructor. Whenever whatever message we are passing, this message is going to be passed to where? That exception, super class. Super of message in the sense, the parent class message only. Okay. Now, it is a easy one. The creation of insufficient fund, like a user defined exception, is easy. Okay, just we need to extend our class, and we need to use the param constructor. Now, the thing is, what the way the logic is going to be executing, then you can apply that insufficient fund exception. Basically, in the normal examples, we applied like this, like what is it? The arithmetic exception of all these things, the try block within the try block. Now, here we need to apply our own exception. That is the point one. Nothing is there. Okay. Now, for the bank account, first we need some balance. Now, private double balance. Okay, private double balance. Now, I want to create like one param constructor. Now, public bank account. Now here, I need to pass a double initial amount. Okay, now initial amount. Now, this dot balance is equal to initial amount. Okay, now I create a like param constructor. Simply here, param constructor. Okay, now initial balance also. Now, what is the condition? Okay, when we are going to get insufficient fund exception. Now, whenever we are withdrawing amount, some amount, okay. Now, whenever withdrawing some amount, if the amount is greater than the initial balance, simply we are going to get the insufficient fund exception. Whenever withdrawal time, okay, whenever we are withdrawing, at that time we are going to get an insufficient fund exception. I'm going to create like one method, public void withdraw. Okay, withdraw. Now, if you want to withdraw, simply we need some amount. Okay, we need some amount. Now, what is the condition? If the amount is greater than the given balance. Okay, the given balance. Now, basically here we are writing like normally we are writing SYSO insufficient fund, but here we are generating exception, right? Okay, అంతకుముందుకి ఏంటి మనం జస్ట్ నార్మల్ ప్రింట్ మెసేజ్ రాసాం. ఓకే, జస్ట్ ప్రింట్ నార్మల్ గా ప్రింట్ అవుతుంది ఇన్సఫిషియెంట్ ఫండ్ ఎక్సెప్షన్ అని. ఇక్కడ ఏంటి ఎక్సెప్షన్ జనరేట్ అవుతుంది. Okay, now simply here we are throwing an exception. Throw new. Okay, throw new. Which type of exception? Invalid. Sorry, insufficient fund exception. Okay, now what is the message you want to show that? Okay, now insufficient funds. Insufficient funds. Please check it. Okay, now simply here we can display that amount. Okay, now if you want to use this insufficient fund exception class, okay, where we are using inside the method, but the method should be first throws insufficient fund exception, then only you can use that. You can throw an insufficient fund exception. Now say an unhandled exception type insufficient fund exception. Okay, the immediately the response is like add throws declaration. Now then only you can use it. Okay, that's a point. Now, or otherwise simply here, now balance okay, balance minus is equal to amount simply SYSO. Okay. Now withdrawal successful. Okay. Now the new balance is okay the balance. Okay. If we entered like correct amount simply here. Now here we can write that main method and withdrawal method. Okay. Now within the main method we need to validate this method, right? Okay, this method only we need to validate. Okay, now here we need to create an object. Now bank sorry, bank account. Okay, now account is equal to new bank account. Okay, now here we need to pass some initial balance 10,000. Okay, the initial balance I passed. Now we need to call this withdrawal method. This withdrawal method is an instance method. How we can call? By using object reference. Now account dot withdrawal I want to call. Okay, now simply I want to withdraw 12,000. Okay, 12,000, and again I want to write SYSO. Now remaining 1,000 lines of code. Okay, see here, if you want to use this method, okay, already this method is throwing like insufficient fund exception. Again we need to handle that exceptions here. Unhandle exception type insufficient fund exception. Okay, ఇక్కడ చూడండి, ఇప్పుడు కంపైల్ టైంలో మనకు ఇలాంటి ఎర్రర్స్ వస్తుంది. ఓకే, ఇలాంటి కంపైల్ టైం ఎర్రర్స్ వస్తే మనం థ్రోస్ మాత్రమే యూజ్ చేయాలి. Okay, throw is not going to be get compile time. Throw is only it will get like at runtime only. Okay, but throws only getting a chance at the time of compile time. Okay, now add those declaration, or you can use the surround with the catch also. Okay, no issues on that. Now again here our main method is along with the method signature, it is a throws insufficient fund exception. Now here control S, right click, run as Java application. Now say in exception thread main insufficient fund exception, insufficient funds the please check it to 12,000. Okay, now if I entered only 2,000, control S, right click, run as Java application. Now say withdrawal successful, the new balance is 8,000, remaining 1,000 lines of code going to be executed. Okay, now this is about like user defined exception. Okay, we'll see like one more example related to like that some kind of a product. Okay, some real time. Okay, are you clear? Are you getting or not? Okay, now we'll see one more example. It will be clear. But suppose I'm going to create like one product class. Okay, now I'm going to create like a product exception. Okay, now class invalid product exception. Okay, now our exception class should be extensive with the super class, that is a exception. Okay, now class has a param constructor. Okay, now even though like up to Spring Boot or microservices also we can use this type of user defined exceptions, we need to create it. Okay, the user defined exception we are creating like this only. Okay, up to Spring Boot or microservices also. Okay, now again public invalid product exception. Now we can pass a string message. That's why the concept is most important. Now here super of message. Now I created like a invalid product exception. Okay, invalid product exception. If you want to create that exception, simply first to bind the product. Okay, basically the product has every product has some ID. Okay, every product has some unique ID. Okay, if the ID is not matched, simply it is an invalid product. Now simply here, I'm going to create like a private string product ID. Okay, product ID. Now, again, I want to check the condition. Now simply here, I want to initialize it something. Now by using constructor, uh, control space the product. Now here I can pass some data. Now string product ID. Okay, string product ID. Now here I'm writing the condition. If the string, sorry, if the product ID, yeah, if the product ID is double equals to null, okay, if the product ID is double equals to null, or okay, now product ID is dot is empty. Okay, is empty method is return type is a boolean. అంటే అండి output boolean type. Empty ఉంటే true, empty లేకుంటే false. It will return type output. Okay, now simply here, if the conditions, if any condition is true, I want to throw an exception. Okay, throw new invalid product exception. Okay, invalid product exception. Now the product ID cannot be null. Okay. Product ID can't be null or empty. Okay, now if we want to use this exception, simply now add those declaration with the okay constructor part. Okay, till now we have seen the method also, but right now we have seen the constructor part also. Okay, that's a point. Now otherwise simply here, okay, if we have that, if we don't have any exception, simply this dot product ID is equal to whatever the product ID you entered. Okay, that's a point. Now we can check with that main method. Now main method we need to handle it. Main control space. Now here I want to create an object. Now product p is equal to new product. Okay, now here we need to pass some ID, but suppose simply I'm passing just empty. Okay, but yeah, yes. Now we need to handle exception, add those declaration with along with the method. Now p dot yeah, okay, directly we can call it, I think. Okay, now SYSO. Now remaining 1,000 lines of code. Okay, remaining 1,000 lines of code. Now right click run as a Java application. Now here we are getting an exception, invalid product exception. Product ID can't be null or empty. Okay, for suppose simply here I'm going to use a null here. Control S, right click run as Java application. As a product ID cannot be null or empty. For suppose simply here I'm going to use some ID. Now uh, okay, this ID I'm going to use. Right click, run as Java application. Now see the remaining 1,000 lines of code going to be executed. Okay, it's a perfect ID. Otherwise, simply here you can write the else condition also here. Okay, else condition also you can write it here. Okay, now like this type of exceptions we are going to create in the real time. But suppose employee ID not exception. Okay, employee ID is not matching exception. Okay, here also that employee ID cannot be null, employee ID cannot be empty. Okay, here we can write a invalid employee ID exception. Okay, like this only we are creating. Mostly we are using this type of things only. But suppose you are learning the course ID exception, the course capacity. But suppose course capacity only 100 students are allowed for the class. Okay, for the course. Okay, now whenever I'm trying to insert like 101, it's not valid. Simply course invalid exception 101. or capacity of course capacity invalid exception. You cannot enroll. Okay, you cannot enroll that type of course. Okay, this type of exceptions we are going to create in the real time situation. Okay, the most important concept. Now, whenever we are creating that user defined exception, okay, up to Spring Boot and the microservices level, we can use this concept to create a user defined exception. Along with we can use some like global exception in the microservices and the Spring Boot level also we can use it. Okay, if you want to understand those things simply, it's a mandatory to understand like this concept. Okay, nothing is there. First we need to create like some exception. Okay, it is a common for every exception. Now, where you want to apply, just apply that invalid exception. Okay, here we are not applying arithmetic, all these things. Why? In the sense, already arithmetic exceptions, everything is present in the invalid exceptions only. Why? In the sense, our class is extends with a super class. Whatever the classes, what are the child or whatever the data we have in the exception, every data is going to be okay present in the invalid exception. That's why we are not going to call any arithmetic, all these things automatically present in the invalid product exception. That's the point. Okay. Is it clear?
Yes.
Current doubts now?
Yeah, clear and
Yeah. Done for the day. Now tomorrow we are going to start the multi-threading concept. Okay. Now I hope like we have only remaining multi-threading we can execute. Uh, After multi-threading, we have the collection and the Java 8 features and the regular expression. Okay, these two things are most important one. Collection and Java 8 features are the most important one. Okay, we can going to like concentrate on like more in the collection and Java 8 features. Okay, the multi-threading is like a little bit, but we need to understand. But we need to concentrate like not compared to collection and Java 8.
right.
Then after that Java 8 and regular expression, we'll go with like database. After database, we have JDBC. After the JPA, and finally the Spring framework and Spring Boot. After that, microservices also we can see that web services are internally. We can create like the REST API also. We can say that. Yeah. Okay. Done for the day. We'll meet tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah,
bye bye.
Yeah.
sure. Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Bye.
Bye bye.